do you think that's an issue that maybe Tottenham historically have struggled with? Whereas, for example, Man United or a Man City, for example, they have a player they want to shift, and they can't shift him. They just stick him in the reserves, and they don't
Rose it.
They stick him in the reserves, and they don't think about we can't sign a player before we shift this player. They think about we're going to sign the player, and you're going. Look, you're not going to be part of our plans. Whether we sell you or not, we're going to shift you in the reserves. We're going to try and sell you, but you're not part of our plans. With Spurs, I kind of feel like it's always like we're only going to sign if we can shift. If we can't shift, then we're stuck with him, and we're going to have to use him. And that's kind of how I see Spurs dealing
Nuno
with
it. and Paratici need to be ruthless with their squad selection. So what is it? 7 homegrown, 25, 7 homegrown. Yeah. So I know some of them will be in just for the homegrown side of it. There is no way around that, right? And if you bring in the youngsters for the homegrown, they're inexperienced. So sometimes you have to keep your homegrown guys. Joe Hart looks like he's on his way out. So I think it's a balance of bringing in youth and having experience. Having homegrown obviously is now, that's not going to change. But I think the key thing is you have a squad of players that feels fresh. If you've got someone who's been there for 7-8 years and he's just not cut it, having him in the squad can have a negative effect, because someone who's got a lot more ambition and someone who wants to absolutely put their, leave every ounce of energy on the pitch could be sitting in the under 23s, so it's looking at both sides, isn't it? It's like, you've been here 7 years. I can't get rid of you, but I'm ruthless enough to stick you in the reserves. And there's a young, fresh guy, 19, 20 years old in the under 23s. I'd rather have him in the squad. He fills the homegrown quota and he's low on the wage bill. And he's someone for the future. And how Harry Kane came through the ranks pretty much,
Yeah,
so
it is.
I wish
we had
were more
Soldado
ruthless.
and Adebayor, didn't we?
Exactly.
And they were kind of not doing it at all. And we were kind of forced into playing Kane at the end.
I'd like to see us be more ruthless with what you said there about sticking certain players in the under 23s and saying, you're not good enough for the squad. You don't want to leave the club. You want to stay on the wage bill. We couldn't find your club because your agent couldn't negotiate, or we couldn't get a
like for example, how I see it is like, if we can't get rid of Sanchez and Dyer, we're going to use them, right? We're not going to sign another centre back until we get rid of them. That's how I see it. Now we've got rid of Toby, we can bring another one in, but I feel like we're not going to bring another one in until we get rid of one of those two. And I feel like, Man United, they've had Phil Jones in their reserves for like 2 years now. Because he's not good enough and they don't want to use him.
But they'll have someone in fresh.
Exactly. They'll bring someone in. They're not going to bother about him.
So they're looking at just the 25 and they're only looking at that. And they're not looking at your wages. They're not looking at how long you've been here. They're looking at the quality of the 25. And if you're not sold, then there's only one other place for you, which is in the under 23s.
And that's where Spurs need a different change mentality.
That's where we need to be more ruthless.
That's exactly as well what Paratici was saying in a different aspect in terms of being ruthless, which we all know Levy has struggled with. When Paratici talks about, he said one of the biggest things he learned from being director of football at Juventus is that when you have a player that you've been scouting for a long time and you're absolutely 100% sure that he's the right player for your team and you're convinced about him, it's unacceptable to lose him for a few million. It's unacceptable because you have to pay the money and you move on, because if you lose out on him, you're losing out on a player who 100% is going to improve your team, and that's not a way to move forward or run a big football club. And if you think back now, how the players are out for the second half, but if you think over the years under Daniel Levy, how many players we have missed out for a few million who we know 100% would have improved our team. So many. It was a breath of fresh air to hear that from
Anti-Climax FC. Because we get all the rumors and we're close, and we hear agents and reliable journalists saying, right, Spurs are speaking to this guy, whether it's Dias, Bruno, Grealish, Mane, the list goes on. And you're like waking up the next morning expecting that news saying secured, done. And we've missed out. And yes,
for the sake of a few million always.
And the worst thing is when they say personal team terms have been agreed with the player, which shows he doesn't mind not being in the Champions League, or he doesn't mind the 100k instead of the 140k. He's happy to get, play in London and do the move and have a starting position and maybe see us as a stepping stone club, which is fine, because sometimes we have to be that. Some players, do want to come to Spurs and see their sights elsewhere. Maybe Tanguy does. Certain players come here and they see it as a 2-3 years and go on, which is fine. But I think the problem is with Levy is what is your expected position this time next year for Spurs? And if he says fourth, then he is really riding his luck.
He's
I mean,
dreaming.
it's a very lucky fourth as it currently stands. I mean, I don't see us anywhere near it. You know,
I
we're talking
can't.
about
I can't see it. I can't see
it's a
any
wing
of them.
it.
Who's
It's a wing
dropping
it.
out?
Yeah,
Who's dropping out?
yeah. It's that we'll get fourth because of luck, because other teams fall around us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and because all our players play well, and we get 8 out of 10s on, you know, 8 out of 10 outfield players putting 8 out of 10. It's not going to happen. That's not how football works. You get 6s, you get 7s. You guys do your ratings. You never get that 8 on a consistent. You get 2 or 3 players, if that. So Levy's got to remind himself, and he's not. Come on, let's be honest. This guy's intelligent. He knows what he's doing. He's trying to wing it, right? He's trying to wing it every season, and that's what Poch did. Poch winged that whole 4 Champions League finishes and the final. It was timing. It was good recruitment with your Tobys and Jans and Ericssons, and it was some bad recruitment with your Fazios and Chadleys. But we found,
and that's probably what held us back winning a title. The bad bits.
Yeah, the bad bits. I mean, we just didn't have the squad for it, and the mentality, to be fair, as well. But you can't keep doing that, Daniel Levy. You can't keep winging it, and the fans are not going to accept it. And you've got 60,000 fans now, starting in a matter of a couple of weeks, and Levy's gonna soon find out. You know, because the transfer window's coming to a close now, and he's probably got 4 weeks to save his skin. Otherwise, the fans are going to be at it, you know, and rightly so, because Tottenham should be in the Champions League. You know, I don't think we're sitting here deluded. I'm not saying anyone has a right to be in the Champions League, but for the stature of the club and where we've been recently, we should be knocking on that door, you know, to get back in.
Especially when you think about ones that we're about to kick off. Yeah, we're kicked off. Spurs kicking off from left to right. No changes as I can see for the second half so far, but we have kicked off. What I was going to say is, from the position we were 2 years ago when we're in a Champions League final, we just moved into a brand new stadium.
Yeah,
we should be one of the most attractive clubs to join. We should have been a club where players were desperate to join, where players looked at us and thought, this is a club going places. They're a club. We're in London, one of the top teams in the Premier League. It's an exciting time to be a part of history and maybe win the first trophy with this big club who are going right now. And now, the fact that we, you know, one sec, Delhi nearly tackling the centre back from MK Dons, but
I'll tell you what, they're zipping it around MK. They've really come out with their tails up. They've really come out attacking and full of tempo.
But the fact that we are so unattractive, you can see that from the managerial side. You can see that from players saying they don't want to join us because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
That has to be on Daniel Levy, how that's come to about.
I think, look, Poch,
it's a big fall from grace from what we had 2 years ago. It's only 2 years.
Kane, you know, Kane's a big part of why we succeeded. Kane and Son, you know, Kane just come out of nowhere, and it was like a 50 million signing. You know, if you look at Kane today, obviously he's worth a lot more. But at the time, you know, after he banged in those first few goals, it was like a 50, 60, 70 million signing for free. Great. You get that sometimes. You know, United back in the day, you know, they had 5, 6 of those come through. But again, we did not invest at the time enough. There we go. MK with a chance.
Oh, in the box. That's a good tackle from Carl Vickers.
We did not invest like our peers, right? And if you don't invest like your peers, you get left behind. And the top 4 is the same team season in, season out, more or less. I know Arsenal have dropped, and we're happy about that. I know Leicester have come on. Oh, a lovely ball over the top.
Oh, Carl Vickers done well.
So Milton Keynes have started well. No, it's not a free kick. The referees let it go.
Yeah, Doherty back to Skip.
So if your peers are progressing, doesn't matter where you are as a football club, in any walk of life, your peers are progressing and you're not, you're going to get left behind. So we need to stop living in this world of not spending, not investing, not refreshing. Is going to be some unique way around competing with our peers that all do the same thing, which is refresh, invest, and keep going. And we're trying to almost sit there and do it the opposite way and do it in a magical, unique way.
And I remember there was one very clear quote from Pochettino when he was talking about how we invest. And everyone talks about the quote, if you have a nice home, you have to have nice furniture, stuff like that. There was actually another quote where he says, you can't think when he spoke about us not investing properly, kind of in a roundabout way. And he says, there's one thing being smart in the market and trying to go for cheap options all the time. But you can't always think you're the smartest person in the room.
No, you can't.
You can't always
Can't
think
keep
you're
getting
just
away.
going to get the cheapest deal all the time, and then you're always going to progress.
Listen,
because that's going to catch up with you.
Chelsea buy players, you know, and they loan them out, and they have 2 recruitments. They have that recruitment, and then it comes back and they'll resell them or they'll keep them, and then they have the ones where they spend the money. And if Spurs want to do that whole thing with youngsters and bring them in, you know, you're going to have to give them time to develop. They're not going to develop as soon as they start with Tottenham. Oh, here we go.
Boys of the ball at the top. Number 10 for MK Don's in the box.
Now,
he's cut it back. No,
people will say,
yeah,
with Lennon, with Walker, with Rose, with Jan, Toby, Lloris, Dembele, Ericsson, Son, Ali, these players were cheap. They're all under 25 million. Some of them 10, 15. And that was smart recruitment. Mitchell obviously was very good for the club. He's gone. Hitchin hasn't quite hit the levels anywhere near what Mitchell was doing. And hopefully Levy's looked back at that and said, you know what, my recruitment guy is actually the person that makes me look good or bad, because I'm not willing to sign off these 50 million deals. So if he's good, I'm good. If he's bad, oh my God, I'm getting it. And I think that's where, here we go, Spurs.
Oh, Bergwijn.
But,
plays it back to Reguilon.
We should
back
go
to
in. I wish
Bergwijn
he'd gone in
there.
and crossed it.
Cuts inside. Great ball into Son. Oh, he can't quite make it. The keeper
Punched
just gets
out
there first. Another lovely bit of play, sharp play for Bergwijn, though. Another little clip into the box. Son nearly getting on the end of it.
So this formula of not spending by Levy, the next thing he's got to do is, if he's not going to spend, is spend well on getting the right recruitment going. And I think with Hitchin, he's realized he's not Mitchell. He's tried. It's not his fault. Obviously, he hasn't backed him with finance. That doesn't help, because when you're going to Grealish and you're going to these players, Bruno, you want Levy to put the money down. So you can't blame Hitchin too much for that. But Levy now is trying to do it with Don Paratici, or I shouldn't call him Don yet, because he's not a Don yet. But, you know, people like what he's doing.
Oh, sorry, keep talking.
Yeah, so there we go. Spurs on the attack. Nah, it's been cleared out. So my view on the whole Levy thing is he's trying to wing it, and you can get away with it so long with smart recruitment. And we did that with those list of players I just mentioned. But it's got to be a mix. It's got to be a mix. And you've got to have signings that you bring in, that you build around. So if it's a Romero, if it's a Milenkovic, you know, whoever it is out there that we can get our hands on, you've got to bring in a spine. You can't wing it in every transfer and spend 15, 20 mil. Yes, we got those players, Dele Alli and Lennon and Walker and Rose, all on the cheap. And at the time, they weren't necessarily proven players. Obviously, we got him from MK here. But we can't keep going like that and expect top 4. I think top 8, yeah. You want to wing it, you know, top 8, no problem. Keep winging it, and you'll get top 8 every season. Top 10, top 7, what we used to be.
I think the most frustrating thing from what you're just saying, I completely agree with what you're saying, but I think even more the most frustrating thing is there's one thing getting good recruitment on the cheap and getting striking lucky, right? But the big problem for me is we've identified players that we've wanted, and we have, and like Levy always says, like, oh, you know, spending big isn't guaranteed success. You can't guarantee success just by spending money. And I agree with that. One say, oh, Son's in on goal.
Sonny on number
Son!
2.
Oh, he tried to clip it again over the keeper, and it was a good save.
Tried to lob him. Tried to chip him.
He squares it to Skip. He could have squared it to Bergwijn. Yeah, he should have squared it to Bergwijn.
To be fair, in real time, he probably
didn't see it. Doherty into now, John. He's cut it back for Lucas, but it's been cut out and it's away. Spurs nearly finding a second there.
So again,
Skip's lost out.
The left-hand side in the first half, we had Joy, and we're getting Joy on the right. So that whole side of MK is there for the taking.
What I was saying is, oh, Lucas has just pinched it. 1 second. He's coming forward now, Lucas. And he's going to pick up a free kick. Yeah, free kick. Levy says you can't guarantee success just by spending players, but we have identified players we want, we know can improve the squad, and we missed out quality. We missed out of it because of a few million.
Yeah.
But you know, but he says you can't guarantee success by spending money, but you know they will improve us. So otherwise, they wouldn't be your first option. Why are they your first option? They're not your first option just because they're the most expensive. They're your first option because you believe they're the best player for your team.
Yeah.
And we always miss out on them.
Yeah.
So that would be good recruitment if you get that player through the door, because that's the player you've identified as the number 1 option that you want. So in that essence, spending money would have a better chance of having success. But what we end up always doing is going for the much cheaper option for the player we didn't actually want in the first place. And then everyone says, oh, it's bad recruitment because we spend this amount of money on a player who didn't work out. But we never wanted him. We had another player who we did want, but we missed out on him for a few million. And that's the most frustrating thing.
I think the thing is, if you've got a big signing on your books that's not playing well, so take Davinson Sanchez or Sissoko was one in our top 5 signings in the last few years. Sissoko was Newcastle, wasn't he? And he was what, 30? It wasn't a cheap buy, Sissoko, was he?
30 million, yeah.
30 million.
But we got him on deadline day as a panic buy.
Yeah, he had a good World Cup with France, and kind of thought, okay, you know, I mean, when I saw it, I didn't think it was a great signing personally. I thought, why are we even getting him? But whatever it is, but you look at certain players, and everyone just knows their quality. Like everyone knows, right? And they're the ones we have to get over the line.
Mane,
there are some, yeah, you could just see it. There are some that you look at and go, I don't know, this guy, is he really worth the 40 million? Is Sanchez worth the money we paid for him? I was looking at him thinking, even as a fan, I don't think he's worth it. But you're looking at Bruno thinking this guy is just ripping it up. You look at Mane, what he's doing in the Premier League. You look at what the level of quality Grealish is at. So I understand that some players you can get, a lot of players you can get cheap, and you don't want a big shark on your books munching all your money, and you can't get rid of him because he's not as good as what you thought he would be. So I get the whole thing of not taking too many risks, but you've got to build a spine, and you've got to have 1 or 2 quality players coming in every window. And they're the ones that everyone's going to go for. So Ruben Dias, Skriniar, we know these are quality players. There's very little debate. It's just about the money, about paying for it. And City do that, right? City do that. And yes, City can waste more money because they've got deeper pockets than us. But we're playing it too safe, Sim, for me. You know, I get the whole wastage thing. There is a wastage element of recruitment in anything. And in football, it's got a huge price. Because if you sign 2 or 3 players and you spend 100 million and it doesn't work out, you've got wastage. You've got 150k on each player on the books. You've paid 30-40 million, and you're sitting there thinking, why didn't we go and get the younger players that were 15 million or 10 million? So there is a balance of buying young. I'm all for that. I'm not saying Spurs just spend loads of money. Not in the kind of club we are. We don't have the wastage that Man City can get away with, or United can get away with, or Chelsea. We just don't have the wastage. So we have to be efficient. We have to be sharp. And that's why recruitment is the biggest part of our success. But I feel like whilst we're keeping an eye on wastage, we're being too safe. And that's the problem. We're too conservative with it. You know, I'm not saying just go out there and spend loads. Oh, we'd love that, but we know we're not that club.
But I think if you, as Paratici said, if you're convinced on a player,
if everyone knows,
you have to go for it. And if you have a chance to sign him, you can't just miss out on him. And then end up moving backwards and not getting a player that you know will improve you for the sake of a few million.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a balance of finding young gems and something for the future. So Gil is a perfect example of that. We're looking at him not this season. This season we'll pray for the best, but he's one for the future.